They say power whispers. But humiliation screams in silence. Quick pause. If you love revenge stories where the underdog flips the whole table, hit like, drop a comment that says Team Revenge, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Now back to the story. Zephyrine Okafor's fingers trembled as she turned the cream-colored envelope over in her hands. Heavyweight cardstock, gold leaf embossing. The kind of paper that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. It had been waiting on her locker door when she clocked in at 4:47 a.m., pinned there like a death sentence wrapped in elegance. Miranda Carter requests the pleasure of your company. 5 years. 5 years of bleaching toilets on the executive floor, while women in Louboutins stepped over her like furniture. 5 years of dawn shifts that started when the city still slept and ended when her knees screamed for mercy. 5 years of existing in that peculiar purgatory reserved for people who clean up after the powerful, seen only when something was wrong, invisible when everything was right. Zephyrine knew every square inch of Carter Global's glass tower. She knew which conference room Miranda preferred for firing people. She knew the exact shade of lipstick Miranda wore on acquisition days, a brutal red called Bloodline. She knew the sound of Miranda's heels on marble, could identify her approach 3 corridors away, had perfected the art of disappearing into doorways before those cold eyes could find her. But today, Miranda wanted her found. The gala invitation sat heavy in her palm, its weight somehow obscene. Annual charity ball, black tie, Carter Estate. The event where Manhattan's elite gathered once a year to congratulate themselves for caring about people they'd never actually touch. Zephyrine had cleaned up after these galas before. The vomit in powder rooms, the champagne ground into Persian rugs, the casual destruction of things that cost more than her annual salary. She'd never been invited to one. This wasn't an invitation. This was a weapon. Zephyrine's reflection stared back at her from the executive bathroom mirror. The same bathroom where she'd once found Miranda's assistant sobbing after a performance review. Her own face looked carved from exhaustion. 32 years old, but her eyes held decades more. Skin that still carried her mother's Igbo beauty beneath the fatigue. Hands that bore the chemical burns of industrial cleaners. The note tucked inside the envelope was handwritten, Miranda's surgical penmanship. I believe in giving opportunities to those who work so hard in the shadows. Consider this a thank you for your service. Do try to find something appropriate to wear. The cruelty was exquisite, deliberate. Miranda Carter didn't do spontaneous generosity. She did calculated evisceration. This invitation was a stage being set, a trap disguised as kindness, a public execution dressed in charity. And Zephyrine knew exactly why. 3 weeks ago, she'd been cleaning Miranda's office after hours when the computer screen flickered to life. Someone had forgotten to lock it. She'd seen the email chain, the offshore accounts, the fabricated vendor contracts funneling money into private holdings. She'd seen enough to understand that Miranda Carter's empire was built on elegant theft. Zephyrine had said nothing, done nothing, disappeared back into her invisible life. But Miranda had seen her, the security footage, the timestamp, the cleaning woman who'd been in the wrong place at the exact wrong moment. This gala wasn't an invitation to celebrate. It was an invitation to be destroyed. Zephyrine folded the card slowly, her pulse hammering against her throat. For 5 years she had been invisible, a ghost who moved through their world without consequence. Until today. Today Miranda Carter had decided to make her visible, and that meant war. The apartment smelled like instant ramen and defeated dreams. Zephyrine dropped her cleaning supplies by the door, the invitation still clutched in her fist like evidence of a crime. The studio was barely 300 square feet, a coffin with a window that overlooked a brick wall. But it was hers, paid for with every scrubbed toilet, every polished floor, every swallowed insult. Kesha looked up from the futon they shared, concern already etched across her face. Z, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse. Zephyrine tossed the invitation onto the makeshift coffee table, a milk crate covered with a tablecloth. I've been invited to become one. Her best friend picked up the card, eyes widening. Miranda Carter invited you to her gala. Why would she? Understanding dawned slowly, then all at once. Oh God, she knows. Zephyrine sank onto the futon, the springs protesting beneath her weight. 7 years ago, she'd owned furniture that cost more than this entire building. 7 years ago, her name had meant something in boardrooms across Manhattan. Zephyrine Okafor, MBA from Wharton, youngest VP at Benjamin & Associates, the rising star who'd graced Forbes 30 Under 30 with a smile that promised she was just getting started. That woman felt like fiction now. Do you remember what I used to be? The question escaped before she could stop it, raw and desperate. Keisha had known her through both lives, the before and the catastrophic after. I remember the woman who built audit trails that saved companies millions, Kesha said quietly. The woman Marcus Webb promised to marry. The woman who thought truth mattered more than politics. Marcus. Even his name tasted like poison. Her fiancé, her colleague, her partner in building something that mattered. Until the Riverside development audit that exposed his embezzlement scheme. Until he'd turned her discovery into her destruction, convincing the board she'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy when he'd chosen someone else. Until her professional reputation became a corpse he buried to save himself. The accusations had been surgical, unstable, vindictive, falsifying documents. By the time Zephyrin understood what was happening, every door in corporate America had slammed shut. References disappeared. Interviews went silent. Her mother's medical bills had piled up while the cancer ate through her savings faster than chemo ate through her body. Zephyrin had held her mother's hand as she died in a county hospital, unable to afford the treatment that might have saved her. Had cleaned out their family home alone, selling everything beautiful to pay for a funeral. Had discovered that dignity was a luxury purchased with money she no longer possessed. The cleaning job had been survival. The invisibility had been strategic. Until Miranda Carter decided to make her visible again. She's going to destroy me in front of everyone, Zephyrin said, her voice hollow. She'll expose me as the disgraced executive playing Maid. Make me a cautionary tale for her guests to laugh about over champagne. Then don't go. If I don't go, I'm still destroyed. She'll tell the story anyway. The fallen woman too ashamed to show her face. Either way, I lose. Zephyrin stood, pacing the narrow space between futon and kitchenette. For 5 years I've been invisible, because invisible meant safe. But Marcus took everything from me by making me disappear, and now Miranda wants to finish what he started. Something old and furious stirred in her chest, a rage that had been sleeping under layers of exhaustion and survival. The woman who'd built her career on exposing corruption, the woman who'd believed in justice before justice, failed her. The woman who'd forgotten how to fight because fighting had cost her everything. I'm tired of disappearing, Zephyrin whispered, but the words carried the weight of an earthquake. I'm tired of being erased by people who destroy lives and call it business. I'm tired of cleaning up their messes while they pretend I don't exist. Kesha reached for her hand. Then what are you going to do? Zephyrin looked at the invitation again, at Miranda's cruel handwriting, at the expensive paper designed to make her feel small. But something had shifted. The trap was still a trap. The humiliation was still planned. But for the first time in 5 years, Zephyrin felt the phantom weight of the armor she used to wear. The woman who'd made Forbes hadn't been a victim. She'd been a warrior. Maybe it was time to remember how to fight. I'm going to that gala, Zephyrin said, and her voice carried an edge that hadn't existed in years. But I'm not going as the woman Miranda expects. I'm not going to be her cautionary tale. Then what are you going to be? Zephyrin smiled, and it was a dangerous thing, sharp enough to draw blood. Her reckoning. Club Azur existed in that liminal space where money met danger and called it entertainment. Zephyrin had come here because the noise made thinking impossible, and thinking had become a form of torture. She nursed a drink she couldn't afford at the bar, the bass thrumming through her bones, watching beautiful people perform their beautiful lives. The gala was in 3 days. She had no plan, no resources, no strategy beyond showing up and refusing to be erased. It wasn't much of a war plan. Well, the voice came from behind her, slurred with expensive whiskey and cheaper judgment. Zephyrin Okafor. I heard you were dead. She turned slowly. Trevor Yang from Benjamin and Associates, 20 pounds heavier and significantly drunker than when they'd worked together. His eyes held that particular cruelty of men who enjoyed watching others fall. Not dead, she said evenly. Just reassigned. Reassigned. He laughed, ugly and loud enough to draw attention. Is that what we're calling it? I heard you went full meltdown after Marcus exposed your little fraud scheme. What are you doing now? Unemployment finally run out. Looking for a new executive to seduce and destroy. The crowd was watching now, phones emerging like predators scenting blood. Zephyrin felt the old shame trying to rise, the urge to disappear that had kept her safe for 5 years. But something else rose faster, the fury that had been building since Miranda's invitation arrived. I'm doing what I've always done, Trevor. Surviving men who lie about women to cover their own crimes. You bitter. They're a problem here. The voice cut through the music like a blade through silk, quiet but absolute. The crowd parted instinctively, and Zephyrin felt the temperature drop before she saw him. Deong Song moved through Club Azure like a king touring his kingdom, which she'd learn later wasn't far from the truth. 6'3" of controlled danger wrapped in a custom suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. Korean features carved with the kind of precision that suggested genetic lottery and excellent bone structure. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Dark, intelligent, and currently fixed on Trevor with the warmth of a winter execution. Mr. Song. Trevor's bravado evaporated instantly. I didn't realize you were. We were just leaving. Deong's hand settled on the small of Zephyrin's back, possessive and protective at once. Unless you'd like to explain to me why you're harassing a woman in my club. Trevor fled. The crowd dispersed like smoke, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. And Zephyrin found herself being guided through the chaos toward the VIP section, with the kind of inevitability that suggested arguing would be pointless. The private booth overlooked the dance floor through one-way glass. Up here, the music was a pulse rather than an assault, and the air carried the scent of expensive cologne and even more expensive whiskey. I don't need rescuing, Zephyrin said, because pride was sometimes all you had left. I know. Deong poured 2 glasses of something amber and probably older than her college degree. Women who need rescuing don't look at men like Trevor Yang the way you just did. Like you were calculating exactly how many different ways you could destroy him, if you chose to. She accepted the glass, studying him. You own this place. I own several places. This one's my favorite. He settled across from her, movements economical and deliberate. Deong Song. And you're Zephyrin Okafor, former VP at Benjamin & Associates, Forbes 30 under 30, victim of one of the most elegant character assassinations I've seen in corporate America. Her hand tightened on the glass. You know who I am. I make it my business to know everyone worth knowing in this city. What I don't know is why a woman of your caliber is letting people like Trevor Yang intimidate her in nightclubs. Maybe because my caliber got recalibrated when my fiancé destroyed my career to cover his embezzlement. Marcus Webb. Deong's expression suggested he'd tasted something rotten. Yes, I'm familiar with his work. He's still at Benjamin & Associates, I believe. Senior VP now, married to the CEO's daughter. The bitterness in her throat had nothing to do with the whiskey. Good for him. Is it? Deong leaned forward, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something dangerous. Because from where I'm sitting, Marcus Webb is a mediocre man who got lucky, whereas you're a brilliant woman who got unlucky. The two are not remotely equivalent. No one had called her brilliant in 5 years. The word hit like a physical blow, cracking something open in her chest. Why do you care? The question came out raw. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I care because I despise waste, Deong said simply. And watching talent like yours scrub toilets because some coward needed a scapegoat. That's obscene waste. He paused, dark eyes studying her with unnerving intensity. Also, I might have a vested interest in making Miranda Carter very, very uncomfortable. Zephyrin went still. You know about the gala. I know Miranda invited you as a power play. I know she plans to humiliate you publicly. I know she thinks you're vulnerable enough to either not show up or show up defeated. His smile was sharp enough to cut. What Miranda doesn't know is that I have resources that could turn her little trap into her own public execution. Why would you help me? Because Miranda Carter has been operating in my city without consequence for too long. Because I believe in balance, and the scales have been tipped against you unfairly. And because I think watching you walk into that gala with the full weight of my backing would be the most entertaining thing I've seen in years. This was insane. He was a stranger offering weapons she didn't understand for a war she couldn't win, but the temptation was intoxicating. The possibility of not facing Miranda's trap alone, of having power backing her instead of destroying her. What do you want in return? Because nothing was ever free, and men like Deong Song didn't rescue fallen women out of altruism. Dinner, he said simply. After you destroy her. I want to take you to dinner and hear every detail of Miranda Carter's face when she realizes she miscalculated. That's it. Dinner. I'm a simple man with simple pleasures. One of which is watching bullies discover they've picked the wrong target. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have a deal, Zephyrin Okafor? Do you trust me enough to let me help you become the woman they fear? Zephyrin took his hand and felt the axis of her world shift. Deal. Excellent. Now, let's discuss exactly how we're going to destroy Miranda Carter's perfect evening. Mrs. Min arrived at Zephirine's apartment at precisely 9 a.m., followed by 3 assistants carrying garment bags that probably cost more than the building's annual property taxes. "Mr. Song sends his regards," the elegant older woman said, surveying the studio with polite neutrality. "We have much work to do and very little time. May we begin?" Keisha had taken one look at the invasion and retreated to the corner with her coffee, watching the transformation with fascination. "I don't understand," Zephirine managed. "Deong said he'd help, but this is—" "Mr. Song believes in being thorough." Mrs. Min gestured, and the assistants began unpacking. Dresses emerged like dreams made fabric, silk that caught light like water, velvet that whispered secrets. A black gown that looked like midnight weaponized. "He also believes you should have choices. Power, Miss Okafor, often begins with deciding what armor you wear into battle." The black gown called to her, backless, dangerous, the kind of dress that announced you were done apologizing for taking up space. Mrs. Min saw her looking and nodded with quiet approval. "An excellent choice. It's Valentino, custom altered to your measurements." "How did he know my measurements?" "Mr. Song is very good at acquiring information." The next 4 hours were a masterclass in transformation. Hair that had been pulled back in practical buns for 5 years was cut and styled into something that framed her face like a weapon. Makeup that didn't hide her exhaustion but somehow transmuted it into something dangerous. Smoky eyes that promised she'd survived worse than whatever you could throw at her. The dress fit like a second skin, like it had been waiting for her specifically. When Zephirine finally looked at herself in the full-length mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked like the woman she'd buried with her mother. Like the Forbes cover girl who'd believed she could change the world. Like someone who'd walked through fire and emerged holding the flames. "Oh my God," Kesha whispered. "Z, you look expensive," Zephirine said, but her voice shook. "I look expensive. You look powerful," Mrs. Min corrected gently. "There's a difference. Expensive is what you buy. Powerful is what you become. The car will be here in 20 minutes. Mr. Song will meet you at the estate. I don't know how to thank him for this." "Then don't. Mr. Song doesn't help people who need gratitude. He helps people who interest him. Try not to forget who you are tonight. Not who you've been. Who you are." When they left, Zephirine stood alone in her apartment wearing a dress that cost more than 6 months' rent, looking at the cleaning supplies she'd dropped by the door 3 days ago. The contrast was obscene, the maid and the woman in Valentino occupying the same impossible space. "You okay?" Kesha asked quietly. "I don't know what I am." Zephirine touched her reflection, half expecting it to shatter. "I spent 5 years making myself small enough to survive. And now Deong Song is handing me the tools to be visible again. I don't know if I remember how. Then fake it." Kesha stood beside her. "Tonight, fake being the woman who scares them. Eventually, you won't be faking anymore." The knock on the door was precise. The driver was waiting. Zephirine grabbed the small clutch Mrs. Min had provided, big enough for her phone, lipstick, and the quiet fury she'd been carrying for 5 years. Kesha hugged her hard at the door. "Go show them who you really are," her best friend whispered. "And text me every detail." The car was a Mercedes, black and sleek as a bullet. The driver opened the door without a word, and Zephirine slid into leather that probably cost more than her college textbooks. As they pulled away from her apartment building, she watched her small life recede in the side mirror. The brick walls, the narrow windows, the safety of invisibility. She was driving toward visibility now. Toward confrontation. Toward Miranda Carter's carefully constructed trap with Deong Song's weapons and her own rekindled rage. The city lights blurred past, each one a small fire against the dark. Zephirine closed her eyes and tried to remember what confidence felt like, what power felt like, what it felt like to walk into a room and know you belonged there. When she opened them again, they were pulling up to the Carter estate. Through the car window, she could see the mansion blazing with light. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes gathered like a portrait of everything she'd lost. The driver opened her door, and cold air rushed in with the sound of classical music and cultivated laughter. Zephirine stepped out onto the marble steps, the black dress moving around her like smoke, and felt every eye within range swing toward her. Somewhere in that crowd, Miranda Carter was waiting. Somewhere in that crowd, her trap was set. But standing at the base of those stairs, dressed in armor she'd forgotten how to wear, Zephirine felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. She felt dangerous. A figure emerged from the shadows at the top of the stairs. Song, in a tuxedo. He descended toward her with deliberate grace, and when he reached her, his eyes held something that looked like pride. Miss Okafor. He extended his arm, and his voice carried just enough to reach the watching crowd. You look like a woman who's about to start a war. Zephyrin took his arm and smiled, sharp and bright and absolutely merciless. Good, she said. That's exactly what I am. Together, they climbed the stairs toward the light, toward the trap, toward the reckoning Zephyrin had been building since the moment Miranda's invitation arrived. The foyer of the Carter estate was designed to make you feel small. 30-foot ceilings dripping with crystal chandeliers. Marble floors that reflected light like ice. A grand staircase that belonged in a palace, not a private home. Everything calculated to remind you that you were in the presence of wealth that didn't need to justify itself. But Zephyrin didn't feel small. With Deong's arm beneath her hand and 5 years of rage compressed into pure, cold focus, she felt like a blade finally finding its target. The room noticed them immediately. Conversations stuttered and died. Champagne glasses paused halfway to painted lips. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a corridor that led directly to where Miranda Carter held court near the main staircase. Miranda saw them, and Zephyrin watched the exact moment recognition hit, watched her hostess's perfect composure fracture for a single second before the Ice Queen mask slammed back into place. My God, someone whispered nearby. Is that Song? Someone else breathed. He actually came. Zephyrin felt Deong's arm tighten slightly beneath her hand, not restraining, anchoring. Smile, he murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. Let them see you're not afraid. But she wasn't smiling because she wasn't afraid. She was smiling because for the first time in 5 years, she was exactly where she wanted to be, walking into the trap with her eyes open and her own weapons drawn. Trevor Yang materialized from the crowd, his earlier drunken cruelty replaced with sober panic. Mr. Song, I didn't expect. We didn't know you'd be attending. Deong's voice carried quiet menace. Miss Carter was kind enough to extend an invitation. It would have been rude to refuse. He gestured to Zephyrin, and Miss Okafor was gracious enough to accompany me. The shock moved through the crowd like wildfire. Miranda recovered first, gliding toward them with controlled fury that masqueraded as hospitality. Mr. Song, what a surprise, Miranda said. I had no idea you were acquainted with my guest. Deong's expression didn't change. Miss Okafor and I met recently. I found her perspective on corporate ethics fascinating, given her experience with fraudulent executives who destroy careers to cover their own crimes. I'm sure you can relate, Miranda. You've built quite the empire on understanding how power protects the guilty. The crowd inhaled collectively. Miranda's composure cracked. I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Zephyrin spoke for the first time, and her voice carried across the silence. You invited me here tonight to make a point, Miranda. To parade me as your cautionary tale, the executive who fell from grace, the woman who dared to challenge men more powerful than herself, and paid for it with her career. Phones emerged. People shifted closer. I invited you, Miranda said tightly, as a gesture of humiliation. Zephyrin cut in. You invited me here to humiliate me publicly, to remind everyone in this room what happens to women who forget their place, to make sure my destruction was complete and witnessed. Zephyrin took a step forward, feeling Deong release her arm, giving her space to fight her own battle while remaining close enough to catch her if she fell. But she wasn't going to fall. But here's what you didn't account for, Miranda. You forgot that invisible doesn't mean powerless. You forgot that spending 5 years cleaning your office meant I saw everything. Every late-night call. Every private email you didn't quite close. Every carefully concealed meeting with offshore account managers. Miranda's face went white. You're lying. Am I? Zephyrin's smile was a weapon now. Shell companies in the Caymans. Vendor contracts that pay your personal accounts. Tax fraud elegant enough to fool everyone except someone who used to build audit trails for a living. I've been invisible, Miranda. But invisible people see everything. The silence was absolute. You can't prove any of that, Miranda whispered, but desperation leaked through. No, Deong said quietly, stepping forward beside Zephyrin. But I can. My forensic accountants have been thorough, as have my lawyers. Miss Okafor's observations were merely the starting point. The investigation has been ongoing for months. Miranda staggered back a step. Zephyrin looked around at the watching crowd. I came here tonight because you wanted to make me a warning, Miranda. A reminder to other women about what happens when they dare to challenge power. But instead, I'm going to be a different kind of reminder. I'm going to be proof that invisible doesn't mean defeated, that survival isn't the same as surrender, that sometimes the woman you tried to erase comes back with weapons you never saw coming. Applause began somewhere in the back, then built until it filled the foyer like thunder. De Jong offered his arm again, and Zephyrin took it. "Shall we go?" he murmured. "I believe you've made your point rather effectively." They turned toward the door. Behind them, the social chaos they unleashed was already consuming everything. As they descended the marble stairs to the waiting car, Zephyrin felt satisfaction. Not happiness, but the clean, sharp satisfaction of looking your destroyer in the eye and refusing to disappear. "That," De Jong said as they slid into the Mercedes, "was magnificent. You were magnificent." Zephyrin leaned back, adrenaline singing through her veins, and laughed. "I think I just destroyed my chances of ever working in corporate America again." "Who says you need their version of corporate America?" De Jong's hand found hers in the darkness. "You could build your own empire, one where invisible women become unforgettable queens." "Dinner," she said, remembering their deal. "You wanted dinner after I destroyed her." "I did." His smile was warmer now. "But I think we should wait until the indictment drops. The victory will taste better once Miranda's empire has completely collapsed." The car pulled away from the Carter estate, carrying them toward whatever came next. Behind them, Zephyrin watched the mansion blaze with light, and the chaos consume everything Miranda had built on other people's destruction. She'd walked into the trap. But she'd walked out alive, and it felt good to be dangerous again. The video went viral before they'd left Manhattan. Someone had recorded the confrontation and uploaded it with a caption that would define the news cycle for weeks. "Cleaning woman destroys billionaire with receipt." By morning, it had 40 million views. By afternoon, every major news outlet was running segments about Miranda Carter's fraud and the dramatic gala confrontation that exposed it. Zephyrin watched the media explosion from De Jong's penthouse. She sat on a sofa that probably cost more than her entire apartment building, coffee in hand, watching her own face on 5 different news channels simultaneously. "Bloomberg is calling you the whistleblower in Valentino," De Jong observed, scrolling his phone. "Forbes wants an exclusive interview. And Benjamin and Associates just issued a statement saying they're reviewing internal procedures regarding personnel management." Translation, Zephyrin said. "They're terrified I'm going to come for them next." "Are you?" Was she? Marcus Webb was still there, still thriving, still building his career on her corpse. Trevor Yang was probably terrified, realizing the woman he'd mocked now had the power to end him. The company that destroyed her was suddenly vulnerable because the world was finally paying attention. "I don't know," she admitted. 5 years ago, I would have said yes immediately. But 5 years ago, I thought justice mattered. I thought truth won eventually. What do you think I should do?" "I think you should do whatever brings you peace," De Jong said. "Revenge is satisfying, but it's not the same as healing. Only you know which one you need more." Her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered. "Miss Okafor. This is Jennifer Morrison from the SEC. We'd like to discuss your knowledge of certain financial irregularities at Carter Global. Would you be available for a formal interview?" "Yes," Zephyrin said. "I'll be available." "You're going to help them destroy her completely," De Jong said after she hung up. "She was going to destroy me completely." "Seems fair. Fair isn't the same as necessary. You could walk away now. You've already won." But Zephyrin wasn't going to walk away. Miranda hadn't just tried to humiliate her. She represented every powerful person who decided Zephyrin's truth didn't matter. "I'm not doing this for revenge," Zephyrin said quietly. "I'm doing this because 5 years ago, I exposed corruption and got destroyed for it. This time, I'm going to expose corruption and watch it get destroyed instead. That's justice finally working the way it's supposed to." Over the next week, the SEC investigation accelerated. Federal prosecutors got involved. Miranda's lawyers scrambled, but the foundation was already crumbling. Benjamin and Associates announced an internal review that was clearly damage control. Marcus Webb went on administrative leave. Trevor Yang was fired for conduct unbecoming, and offers started arriving. Consulting firms wanted to hire her as a fraud investigator. Law firms wanted her for expert testimony. Companies wanted her to audit their finances. Zephyrin Okafor, who'd been unemployable for 5 years, suddenly couldn't answer her phone without another opportunity appearing. "It's obscene," she told Kesha, back in their tiny apartment. "A week ago I was invisible. Now everyone wants a piece of me." "That's not obscene," Kesha said. "That's power recognizing power. They're scared of you, They're trying to buy your silence by making you successful. Should I take one of the offers? Do you want to work for the same kind of people who destroyed you? The same system that protected Marcus and punished you for telling the truth? No, I want to help people like me, Zephyrin said slowly. People who got destroyed for telling the truth. People who lost everything because they challenged powerful men. I want to help them rebuild. How? I don't know yet. But maybe it's time to stop surviving and start creating something that matters. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb, she answered. Zeph. His voice carried the same charm that had once made her believe in fairy tales. I saw the news. I wanted to reach out. To explain. Explain what, Marcus? How you framed me for your embezzlement. How you convinced everyone I was unstable when I caught you. How you married the CEO's daughter while I buried my mother in a pauper's grave. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But it wasn't personal. It was survival. You have to understand. I understand perfectly. You're calling because you're terrified. I'm coming for you next. Because Benjamin and Associates is reviewing your work. Because your empire is built on the same fraud you blamed me for. You're right to be terrified, Marcus. Because I'm done being the woman you destroyed. I'm the woman who destroys back. She hung up, blocked the number, and felt the last piece of her old self die completely. That night, Dion called. Turn on the news. She did. Every channel ran the same story. Carter Global executives indicted on federal fraud charges, including Miranda Carter. Miranda Carter arrested this morning. The woman who'd tried to destroy her was being led away in handcuffs. It's over, Zephyrin whispered. No, Dion said. It's beginning. You destroyed the woman who tried to erase you. Now comes the harder part. Figuring out who you want to become instead. Dinner, Zephyrin said. You wanted dinner after I destroyed her. I think I'm finally ready. Tonight, Dion agreed. And Zephyrin, wear something powerful. We have empires to discuss. The restaurant existed in that rarefied space where reservations required 6 months' notice, and money alone couldn't guarantee entry. Zephyrin had changed 3 times before settling on deep emerald silk. Expensive enough to belong, but understated enough to suggest she didn't need to prove anything. Dion stood when she arrived, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not the controlled danger she'd seen at Club Azure, or the calculated menace from the gala. This was something raw. Appreciation mixed with something that looked almost like vulnerability. You're staring, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. I'm memorizing, he said. The woman who walked into Miranda's trap is not the same woman sitting across from me now. You've transformed in a week. So have you. You're not wearing your I could destroy you face tonight. He laughed. With you, I don't need to. You've already proven you can destroy people perfectly well on your own. The server brought wine. De Jong raised his glass. 2 invisible women who become unforgettable queens. They drank. The adrenaline was fading. What remained was more complicated. Gratitude mixed with confusion. Attraction tangled with caution. Why did you really help me? Zephyrin asked. Don't say it was entertainment. Tell me the truth, De Jong. My family built an empire on fear and violence, he said. The song name means something in certain circles. I inherited businesses I didn't choose and a reputation I didn't build. But I've learned true power isn't about making people fear you. It's about helping people become powerful themselves. When I saw you in Club Azure, being degraded by a man who should have been beneath your notice, I saw someone stripped of power by people who feared what you could become. So you decided to give it back. I decided to give you the tools to take it back yourself. There's a difference. You walked into that gala. You spoke those words. You made Miranda's empire crumble. I just made sure you had the resources to fight on equal terms. I don't know how to trust again, Zephyrin admitted. Marcus weaponized intimacy and trust. I don't know if I'm capable of it. Then don't trust me yet, De Jong said. Just let me keep standing beside you while you build whatever comes next. Trust can come later. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. Tell me about your family, Zephyrin said. What kind of empire? The kind that operates in shadows, De Jong answered. Import-export businesses that sometimes import things beyond customs approval. Investments in industries that prefer not to be examined too closely. I've been trying to legitimize everything, to transition the businesses into something that can exist in daylight. But the reputation remains. Dating me means dating someone whose family name carries weight you might not want. So bringing me to that gala, publicly claiming me, you made me a target. I made you protected, he corrected. Everyone in that room now knows you're under my family's protection. That's a shield. But it's a shield you didn't ask for, and I should have discussed it with you before using that night to make a statement about my own alliances. What kind of statement? That the Song family backs people who fight corruption. That we're moving away from the shadows and toward legitimate power. That Miranda Carter's version of elite crime, hiding behind respectability while destroying lives, is no longer acceptable. Also that anyone who tries to use invisible women as collateral damage will answer to me personally. You're building something, Zephyrin realized. A different kind of power structure. I'm trying to. And I'd like you to be part of it. As what? Your project. Your proof that you've reformed. As my partner, DeYoung said. You want to help women destroyed by powerful men. I have resources, connections, and a reputation that makes people nervous enough to cooperate. Together, we could build something that actually changes the system, instead of just surviving it. I need time, Zephyrin said, to figure out who I am now that I'm not surviving anymore. Take all the time you need, DeYoung said. I'm not going anywhere. They talked for hours about his family's plans, her vision, the intersection of justice and healing, love and strategy. When they stepped back into Manhattan's glow, neither of them moved toward the car right away. Thank you, Zephyrin said, for dinner, for weapons, for standing beside me. Thank you for letting me, DeYoung said, for being brave enough to fight back. He was going to kiss her. She wanted it, but she needed to be sure. Not yet, she whispered. Ask me again when I'm building something instead of surviving something. Then I'll wait, he said, however long it takes. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, where Kesha waited with wine and curiosity. So, Kesha demanded, are you dating a gangster's grandson or what? I'm dating possibility, Zephyrin said. And maybe eventually I'm dating him too. 6 months later, the office space in Tribeca was nothing like Benjamin and Associates' sterile corporate tower. Zephyrin had chosen it deliberately. Open floor plan, natural light, furniture that invited collaboration instead of hierarchy. The sign by the door read Okafor Restoration Group. Beneath it, rebuilding careers, restoring dignity, reclaiming power. Another 3 inquiries this morning, Kesha announced. 2 women escaping NDAs from toxic workplaces. 1 accountant who exposed fraud and got blackballed. They all saw the TED Talk. The TED Talk had been DeYoung's grandmother's idea. Tell your story properly, she had insisted. Make them understand invisible women have always been there, watching, learning, waiting to become dangerous. The talk went viral. Okafor Restoration Group started as a vision and became a movement. Tell them we're booking consultations for next month, Zephyrin said. And check with DeYoung's legal team. We need proper protection before we proceed. DeYoung's involvement evolved naturally. His resources, her vision, his connections, her strategy, his family's reputation for protection, her commitment to justice. They were partners in every sense, except the one that mattered most. You 2 are basically married except for the actual dating part, Kesha said. I'm making sure, Zephyrin said, that if we cross that line, it's because we're ready, not because we're caught up in adrenaline or gratitude. You've been ready for months, Kesha said. And so has he. You're just scared. She was right. That night, Mrs. Song's apartment smelled like ginger and garlic and something sweet baking. You're late, the old woman announced. DeYoung was here at 6:30 helping me prep vegetables like a good grandson. You need punctuality if you're going to run an empire. DeYoung stood chopping vegetables in an apron that read Kiss the Cook in Korean. He smiled at Zephyrin, warm and private. 6 months, you 2 have been circling each other like nervous teenagers, Mrs. Song said. Partnership, collaboration. Other words people use when they're too scared to say I love you. Zephyrin felt her heart hammer. Tell me I'm wrong, Mrs. Song said. Tell me you don't love my grandson. Zephyrin couldn't. Because you're not wrong, she whispered. DeYoung turned to her, hope and fear in his eyes. I've been in love with you since Club Azur, Zephyrin said. Since you stepped between me and Trevor like my dignity mattered. Since you handed me weapons and watched me fight. Since you spent 6 months being careful and respectful until I forgot we were also building something else. I didn't want to rush you, DeYoung said. I wanted you to choose me because you wanted to. Not because you felt obligated. I'm sure, Zephyrin said. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. DeYoung kissed her, gentle and desperate and right. Finally, Mrs. Song said, now set the table before dinner gets cold. And DeYoung, respect without action is just cowardice with better PR. Later, walking through Manhattan with DeYoung's hand in hers, he stopped and looked at her. Move in with me, he he said. Because I want to wake up next to you. Because I love you. Yes, Zephyrin said. But I'm bringing Kesha, and we're getting a bigger place, and I'm painting at least one room teal. Done, Deong said. 5 years after the gala, Zephyrin stood in the Javits Center preparing for the keynote speech that would define Okafor Restoration Group's next chapter. The hall held 3,000 people, women and men whose careers had been destroyed by power, learning to become unforgettable again. The organization had expanded beyond Manhattan to 12 cities. They'd created a model that worked: legal protection, career reconstruction, public relations support, community. 5 minutes, Keisha said, adjusting Zephyrin's mic. Deong slipped in. 5 years of legitimate empire building had transformed his family's reputation. They had moved toward daylight. Their daughter, Chioma Song, named for Zephyrin's mother, was 18 months old and with her grandmother. How do I look? Zephyrin asked. Like a queen, Deong said. Like exactly who you are. 2 minutes, the stage manager said. Zephyrin breathed in and stepped toward the stage entrance. The lights dimmed. The crowd quieted, and Zephyrin walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. 5 years ago, I was invited to a gala where I was supposed to be humiliated, Zephyrin began. Where a powerful woman planned to use my destruction as entertainment. Where I was supposed to disappear quietly. I didn't disappear. I told the truth about corruption that powerful people wanted hidden. But here's what I learned. Revenge is satisfying, but it's not sustainable. Justice without systemic change is just trading one kind of wound for another. So we built something different. Not just revenge, but restoration. Not just punishment, but protection. Today, I'm announcing our biggest initiative yet, the Okafor Foundation for Whistleblower Protection. We're going to change the game. Make retaliation expensive and protection accessible. I was invisible once, Zephyrin said. And invisibility taught me something powerful. When you're invisible, you see everything. And when invisible women finally become visible, when we stop being silent about what we've seen, we become absolutely unforgettable. We become the reckoning that destroys empires and builds something better in their place. The crowd rose. Applause washed over her. After the keynote, Zephyrin finally made it backstage where her family waited. Mama? Chioma reached for her. Hey, baby girl, Zephyrin said, holding her close. Mrs. Song appeared satisfied. Good speech. Could have been 5 minutes shorter. They went to dinner. Over wine and too much food, they celebrated what restoration looked like in real life. Later, after Chioma was asleep, Zephyrin stood at the windows looking at Manhattan's glow. Deong joined her. What are you thinking? He asked. That 5 years ago, I was standing in a studio apartment looking at Miranda Carter's invitation and deciding whether to keep surviving or start living again, Zephyrin said. I chose to live. I chose to fight. Any regrets? Only that it took me 5 years to start fighting back. But maybe I needed those years. Invisibility taught me how to see everything, how to build strength in silence, how powerful you become when you stop apologizing for existing, like how love looks when it's built on respect instead of control. We built this, Zephyrin said. Best decision I ever made, Deong said. Offering you weapons and watching you become dangerous. Zephyrin laughed, full and free. And somewhere, she hoped her mother was proud too. I became a queen, and it was worth everything. If this story hit you in the chest, do 3 things right now. Like the video. Subscribe for more addictive romance and revenge stories. And comment your favorite moment. Was it the gala confrontation? The handcuffs? The first kiss? Or the empire she built after the fire? I'll see you in the next story.